The opening chapter of the final season does not rush into battle. Instead, it lingers on reunions, political tension, and the heavy silence of anticipation before the storm. Winterfell is not about swords clashing, but about faces meeting again after years, about truce being delayed yet hanging heavily in the air, and about preparing for a war that is no longer distant. It is at the door. The episode begins with the gates of Winterfell opening to receive an army unlike any the North has ever seen. The disciplined ranks of the Unsullied march in unison, their spears reflecting the pale winter sun. Behind them thunder the Dothraki horsemen, foreign and savage in the eyes of the Northerners, their cries echoing across the snow-covered fields. Above, two shadows slice through the cold sky, Drogon and Rhaegal. Their massive wings darken the land, their roars shake the earth itself. Children scream, mothers pull them back, and even hardened men stare upwards with dread. The people of the North, proud and stubborn, look upon their so-called saviors with suspicion and fear. Among the crowd, Arya Stark watches in silence. Her face softens when her eyes find Jon Snow riding at the head of the procession. She remembers him as the brother who gave her needle, the one who always treated her as his equal. Now he returns not as the bastard of Winterfell, but as a king who has bent the knee. The sight fills her with pride and longing, yet unease as well. Daenerys rides at Jon's side, regal and unyielding, but every look cast upon her is cold. The Northerners whisper, "Why should we bow to another foreign queen?" In the castle yard, Sansa Stark stands tall. She greets Daenerys with courtesy but no warmth. Her eyes are sharp, calculating. Daenerys offers smiles, but Sansa does not return them. Between the two women hangs an invisible wall of ice. Jon tries desperately to bridge that distance. "Without her we cannot win," he reminds his sister. Yet Sansa's voice cuts like frost. "And without the North, she cannot hold Westeros." Their glances say what words do not. The alliance may be necessary, but trust is far away. For all the politics, the episode gives one of its most tender moments, Jon and Arya's reunion. As Jon inspects Winterfell's courtyard, Arya steps forward. Their eyes meet. Time collapses. They rush into each other's arms, holding tight as if afraid the other might vanish again. Jon pulls back, marveling at how much she has changed. "You still have needle?" he asks, and she shows the thin blade at her hip. He shows Longclaw in return. The exchange is simple yet profound. They are no longer children, no longer innocent, but warriors forged in pain, brother and sister once more. The mood shifts when Bran speaks. No longer Bran Stark, but the three-eyed raven. He has shed almost all humanity. He does not waste time on pleasantries. "The Night King has your dragon. The wall has fallen. His army marches south." The words crash upon the hall like thunder. Smiles fade, voices fall silent. The war is no longer rumor. It is here the lords of the North gather. Young Lyanna Mormont, fierce as ever, voices what many think. "Jon betrayed them by bending the knee. We named you king in the North. We did not choose her." Jon defends himself. He insists he did not kneel for power, but for survival. There is only one war that matters. The Great War, and it is here. Yet his words fail to silence the doubt. Daenerys stands at his side, but in the eyes of the North she remains an outsider. Amid this tension, Daenerys invites Jon to ride with her. Hesitant but daring, Jon climbs onto Rhaegal's back. The dragon accepts him, wings unfurling as they soar into the frozen skies. The world below shrinks to a tapestry of rivers and forests. Laughter escapes Jon's lips as fear gives way to exhilaration. Daenerys rides Drogon beside him, glancing across the wind to watch his face. For her, it is both joy and wonder, to share flight not just with her children, but with a man she feels drawn to. They land by a secluded waterfall. Snow falls gently. Water rushes beneath frozen cliffs. The two draw close, voices soft, glances lingering. It is a moment of tenderness in a world preparing for war. Yet the audience, armed with knowledge of Jon's true parentage, cannot escape the bitter irony. In the crypts of Winterfell, Samwell Tarly receives news that breaks him. Daenerys executed his father and brother with dragonfire for refusing to kneel. His heart sinks. The gentle Sam, who believes in mercy, sees the other side of Daenerys, the fire that consumes without pity. Later, Bran tells Sam it is time. Sam approaches Jon, his face pale with sorrow. "You are not Jon Snow," he begins. Jon laughs it off, but Sam continues. "You are Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, the true heir to the Iron Throne." Jon staggers, disbelief plain. Everything he has believed about himself, his bastard name, his place in the world, collapses. He is both wolf and dragon, both Stark and Targaryen. The weight of destiny crashes upon him, and with it the realization that his love for Daenerys is cursed by blood and crown alike. Far to the south, Cersei Lannister plots. She ignores the Night King, mocking tales of the dead. To her, the only war worth fighting is against the living. She welcomes Euron Greyjoy, who boasts of bringing the Golden Company from Essos. With mercenaries, ships, and gold, Cersei believes she can outlast both the dead and her rivals. Her arrogance is chilling, her smile venomous. Elsewhere, Theon Greyjoy finds his courage at last. Long haunted by his past, he leads a raid to rescue his sister Yara. When the crew hesitates, he fights one of his men to prove his strength. Beaten and bloodied, he rises each time, refusing to yield. His victory is not just in fists, but in spirit. At last, Theon claims leadership. He will save Yara, and in doing so, reclaim himself. The episode closes with terror. Beric Dondarrion and Tormund Giantsbane explore Last Hearth, seat of House Umber. The castle is abandoned, the hall silent, but for the whistle of wind. In the Great Hall, they find a grotesque sight. Young Lord Umber nailed to the wall, surrounded by the spiral symbols of the White Walkers. Suddenly the boy's eyes snap open, burning blue. He screeches, lunging as a wight. Beric ignites his flaming sword, plunging it into the body. The symbols ignite, flames twisting in the shape of the Night King's mark. The camera pulls back slowly, the fire flickering against stone walls, the spiral burning as a dreadful omen. Darkness swallows the frame, leaving the audience with a single truth. The long night has begun. When the heavy gates of Winterfell creaked open, silence spread through the corridors. Jaime Lannister walked in, clad in golden armor that once shone with pride but now looked tarnished like the man himself. For years he had been one of the most controversial knights in Westeros, the Kingslayer, and now he stood face to face with the daughter of the Mad King, Daenerys Targaryen. The throne room was cold, filled with eyes that weighed down on Jaime like a burden. Daenerys, the Dragon Queen who believed the Iron Throne was her destiny, studied him with a cold smile. Her voice carried the sharp edge of decades of anger. "You killed my father. Why should I trust you?" Jaime's face showed neither pride nor regret. He was weary but still standing. "If I hadn't killed him, thousands would have died," he said. His words dropped like stones onto the floor. In that moment, everyone in the hall saw the shadows of the past come alive again. Yet Jaime's salvation came from an unexpected place. Brienne of Tarth stepped forward with quiet confidence. Her voice held both gratitude and truth. "He saved my life. He was not the dishonorable man people think. The Jaime I knew kept his word and did what was right." Sansa Stark turned to Brienne. In the north, Brienne's word was as sharp as any sword. When Sansa gave her nod, something shifted in the room. Daenerys' anger did not vanish, but with Brienne's testimony, Jaime was allowed to live. Jon Snow remained silent. His mind burned with a far greater secret. Samwell's revelation still echoed inside him. He was not just Jon Snow. He was a Targaryen. In the cold courtyards of Winterfell, Arya Stark sought out Gendry. The clang of hammer against steel echoed as firelight danced across his face. Arya's eyes burned with determination. "Make me a weapon," she demanded. "Something special, something that will spill their blood." But behind the request was more than war. In Arya's eyes lingered the hunger of someone who had lived too long under the shadow of death, the desire to feel alive. And so, with the weight of the coming battle pressing in, she found herself in Gendry's arms. For one night, Arya remembered she was not only a fighter, but a woman who could still feel. Within Winterfell's walls, Bran Stark waited in his chair as Jaime approached. Bran's eyes, carrying the weight of past and future, fixed on him. Jaime's breath caught. He thought his judgment had come. But Bran's voice, distant and otherworldly, broke the silence. "I am not that boy anymore, and you are not that man." The words pierced Jaime's soul. It was not vengeance, it was something rarer, forgiveness. A second chance. The great hall filled once more with lords and leaders gathered around maps of the north. Hands brushed across parchment, voices rose and fell. Bran's words silenced them all. "The Night King is coming for me, for the three-eyed raven, because I am memory." The air grew heavy. Bran would be bait, and the fate of all would rest upon that trap. Then Theon Greyjoy stepped forward. His voice did not tremble. "I will protect him." Once a traitor, now consumed with remorse, Theon offered his life as atonement. As night deepened, quiet rooms filled with murmurs and firelight. Around the hearth, Jaime, Tyrion, Brienne, Podrick, Davos, and Tormund gathered. Perhaps this was their last night alive. Tormund told his wild story of suckling at a giantess's breast, laughter echoing in the hall. Tyrion poured wine, offering brief warmth. But the night's defining moment came when Jaime stood before Brienne. "Kneel, Lady Brienne," he said, his voice steady and solemn. She knelt, her eyes shimmering. "Rise, a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms." Tears glistened on her cheeks, reflecting the firelight. A dream she had never dared hope for, now made real by the least expected hand. Then Podrick sang Jenny of Oldstones, his voice haunting and soft. The song lingered like a prayer, reminding them all of their humanity as death approached. Beneath Winterfell, in the ancient crypts, an even heavier truth was spoken. Before the stone statue of Lyanna Stark, Jon Snow revealed the weight he carried. "I am not Jon Snow, I am Aegon Targaryen, the legitimate son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark." Daenerys' face froze in horror. This truth shattered not only their love, but also her claim to the throne. Jon's very existence threatened everything she had fought for, but before the storm between them could break, horns sounded across the walls. Their argument drowned beneath the call of war. The final moments of the episode were carved in silence. On the battlements of Winterfell, watchmen peered into the night. The wind carried a chill that cut to the bone. And then shadows. Pale shapes moved at the horizon. The faint sound of hooves drifted from the darkness. The army of the dead had arrived. The camera pulled back, the lights of Winterfell shrinking into a sea of black, as silence turned into the roar of an endless winter, and the audience knew. Before dawn, the long night would begin. Winterfell stood cloaked in silence. The air was so cold it seemed to cut into bone, and the sky above was drowned in a storm of black clouds. Soldiers lined the walls and the fields, their breaths visible, their hands trembling on sword hilts and spears. Across the ranks stood unsullied, the remnants of the Dothraki, the soldiers of the north and the knights of the Vale, all eyes fixed on the horizon, swallowed by darkness. None could say what waited in that endless night, but every heart carried the same dread. Perhaps this would be the last night of men. Out of the shadows, a lone figure appeared. Melisandre, robed in crimson, walked forward like a flame piercing through black fog. She spoke the ancient words of fire, her voice trembling like a hymn carried by the wind. One by one, the Arrax of the Dothraki burst into flame, lighting up the night in a sea of fire. For one fleeting moment, hope flickered across every face. Thousands of flaming blades cut the darkness like stars falling to earth, and with a thunderous cry, the Dothraki charged into the abyss. Their flames roared like a tidal wave of fire. But hope died quickly. From afar, the flames blinked out, one after another, devoured by the unseen enemy. Screams carried across the night, and soon silence returned, except for the few riders who stumbled back, their faces hollow, their souls shattered. The great cavalry of Daenerys Targaryen was gone, swallowed in minutes by the dead. Daenerys's breath caught in her throat. The plan, the careful strategy, had already collapsed. Jon Snow turned toward her. They did not need words. Only one truth remained: survive. Drogon and Rhaegal soared into the storm, their wings tearing through ice and wind. Above the clouds, a new terror emerged. The Night King rode Viserion, his once proud dragon, now a rotting husk of wings and flame. From its maw poured torrents of blue fire, searing the sky apart. The heavens became a battlefield, fire and ice clashing in a chaos of wings and roars. Below, burning fragments rained upon Winterfell, each ember a reminder of the doom approaching. On the ground, the dead advanced in endless waves. The Unsullied braced their shields, their discipline holding against the tide, while Davos, Arya, and countless warriors fought atop the battlements. But for every white that fell, 10 more clawed upward. Swords clanged, screams filled the night, and still the dead pressed forward. Among the chaos, a small figure stood defiant. Lyanna Mormont, the Lady of Bear Island, raised her weapon, though dwarfed by the monstrous giant white before her. The beast seized her, crushing her bones as it lifted her high. Pain racked her body, but her spirit did not falter. With her final breath, she drove her spear deep into the giant's eye. It collapsed in death as she crumpled beneath it. A child's courage silenced a monster, proving honor is measured not by size but by heart. In the narrow stone halls of Winterfell, Arya Stark's fight unfolded like a nightmare. Shadows lurked at every corner. The scrape of bone against stone echoed in her ears. She darted through corridors, bloodied but unbroken, pursued by the dead. The tension was suffocating, as if the castle itself had become a maze of horror. Every step was survival, every heartbeat a desperate defiance against the darkness. Beneath the castle, in the crypts, those who sought safety found only terror. Women, children, and the elderly huddled beneath the carved faces of the stark dead. But when the Night King raised his army, stone coffins cracked, and the ancestors of Winterfell clawed their way from their graves. The crypts, once a refuge, turned into a slaughterhouse. Screams of betrayal and despair filled the tombs as the dead feasted upon their descendants. In the Godswood, Bran Stark waited in silence, his gaze vacant yet infinite. His purpose was clear. He was the lure, the memory the Night King sought to erase. Beside him stood Theon Greyjoy. Once a traitor, now a man seeking redemption, he loosed arrows until his quiver lay empty, then fought with spear in hand. The tide of the dead overwhelmed him, but he did not falter. And then, as the Night King appeared, his figure carved in ice and dread, Theon made his final charge. His weapon struck nothing. The Night King's blade pierced him with ease, yet Bran's words followed him into death. "You are a good man, Theon." With those words, his soul was freed. Elsewhere, Jon Snow was thrown from the sky as Rhaegal plummeted, wounded and broken. Daenerys, still astride Drogon, was dragged to the ground by swarming whites. At her side, Jorah Mormont appeared like a dying flame refusing to be extinguished. Again and again, he rose, his body torn by blade and claw, his strength fading, but his resolve unshaken. He fought not for glory, but for love, and when the final blow came, he collapsed at Daenerys' feet. She clutched him, tears streaming, her screams echoing into the night. His devotion, his unrequited love, ended there in sacrifice. And then, silence fell. The Night King entered the Godswood. His steps were slow, deliberate, as though victory already belonged to him. He drew his blade, his gaze locked on Bran, who sat motionless beneath the weirwood tree. The world seemed to stop, but out of the shadows came a blur. Arya Stark, the girl who had walked with death since childhood. She leapt like a phantom, dagger raised. The Night King's hand caught her throat, his grip ice itself. For an instant, all hope flickered out. Then her hand dropped the blade, only to catch it with the other. With one swift motion, she drove the Valyrian steel dagger into his chest. The Night King shattered into a storm of ice. All across the battlefield, White Walkers screamed and dissolved. Whites crumbled into lifeless heaps. The Great War ended in a single heartbeat. Winterfell stood in ruins, its walls blackened, its courtyards choked with corpses. Survivors wept and embraced among the carnage. Some cried in relief, others in despair for those lost. Arya Stark, small and bloodied, had changed the fate of the world with one strike. As the camera lingered, Bran remained still beneath the weirwood, Arya's blood-stained dagger gleaming faintly in the dark. The long night was over, but the scars it left on the living would not fade so easily. As the first light of dawn touched the stones of Winterfell, silence hung heavy in the air. But this was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of mourning. After the bloody victory of the long night, the survivors gathered to bid farewell to the fallen. In the courtyard, hundreds of bodies were laid upon towering pyres. Jorah Mormont's lifeless form lay before Daenerys' tearful eyes. Lyanna Mormont's small frame rested beside the giant she had slain. Each corpse was a reminder of the terrible price paid for survival. Jon Snow stepped forward, his voice steady though his throat tightened. "They died for us to defend the world of the living. We are their legacy, and their courage will live on in us." Torches were lifted, and flames roared into the sky. As smoke billowed, silence mixed with grief on every face. Daenerys wept over Jorah. Sansa laid a stark pin upon Theon. Arya gazed fiercely at Lyanna's pyre. The fire consumed not only bodies, but fragments of the survivors' hearts. After the funerals, a feast was held in the Great Hall. Laughter, wine, and song filled the room, as men and women tried to celebrate life even in the shadow of death. Yet beneath the joy ran deep currents of unease. In front of the crowd, Daenerys legitimized Gendry, naming him Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End. It was both a gift and a political move. Cheers filled the hall, but Arya's answer to Gendry's proposal later that night was final. "I'm not a lady, never was, never will be." Elsewhere, Jaime and Brienne finally gave in to their long-suppressed feelings. In the quiet of Brienne's chamber, the bond they had built through war and loyalty became something deeper. For a fleeting moment, the world outside did not exist. But for Daenerys, the feast was a prison. She watched as the people of the North toasted Jon, their true hero, their chosen king. Jealousy and fear gnawed at her heart. Tyrion and Varys noticed too. The queen was growing more isolated, more dangerous. In the Godswood, Jon revealed the truth to Sansa and Arya, urged on by Bran's gaze. "I am not Jon Snow. I am Aegon Targaryen." Arya stayed silent, but Sansa's face darkened. She could not keep the secret, and soon Tyrion knew. The revelation was a crack that would split the realm. When Daenerys set sail for Dragonstone, Euron Greyjoy's fleet lay in wait. Great. Scorpions fired, and Rhaegal was struck down, screaming as he crashed into the sea. Daenerys' horror was absolute. Her power was slipping, her children dying. Euron's attack shattered her fleet and left Missandei captured. Soon, armies faced each other before King's Landing. Cersei stood on the walls, Missandei in chains beside her. Tyrion pleaded, "Show mercy for your child." But Cersei's heart was stone. Missandei stood proud, her voice ringing out, "Dracarys." Her head fell moments later as Grey Worm's tears burned and Daenerys' fury turned to fire. Back in Winterfell, Jaime's fragile peace with Brienne shattered when he heard the news. Though Brienne begged, he chose to ride south. "I am her creature too," he confessed, chaining himself once more to Cersei's fate. The episode closed with Daenerys before the walls of King's Landing. Missandei's blood stained the ground, and Daenerys' face turned to stone. The war ahead would not be about justice, it would be about vengeance. Dark clouds gathered above, and the promise of fire and ruin loomed over Westeros. Night had fallen over Dragonstone, and in the flickering candlelight of a lonely chamber, whispers spread like shadows. Varys sat hunched over his desk, quill scratching against parchment. Every line carried the same dangerous truth. Jon Snow was not Ned Stark's bastard, but Aegon Targaryen, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. His hands trembled as he wrote, not from fear but from urgency. If Daenerys could no longer be trusted, then hope lay in Jon. His ravens were ready, his secrets prepared to scatter across the Seven Kingdoms like sparks before a fire. But Tyrion had already spoken. Daenerys knew. When the morning came, soldiers pulled Varys from his cell. He was brought to the dark shore, where Drogon loomed like a living mountain. Daenerys did not weep. She did not scream. She only spoke a single word, her voice colder than the sea breeze. Dracarys. The dragon's fire erupted, swallowing Varys in a storm of flame. His screams echoed only for a moment before silence returned. It was the quiet of finality, the end of one of the realm's most cunning survivors. Daenerys watched without blinking. Rhaegal's fall from the skies, Missandei's execution on the city walls, Jorah's death in her arms, every wound had hollowed her. She no longer ate, she barely slept. Her eyes stared into emptiness. Tyrion tried to reason, Jon tried to comfort, but their words slid off her like rain on stone. The Dragon Queen was alone. Only Drogon remained utterly faithful. Tyrion turned to Jon in desperation. His whisper was sharp, filled with dread. "If she rules, it will be through fear. But you, your blood, your name could bring peace." Jon's face was torn between duty and loyalty. His love for Daenerys had grown cold, and when he stepped back, refusing her touch, her isolation deepened into despair. At King's Landing, armies gathered like thunderclouds. Tyrion begged one last time. "If the bells ring, it means surrender. Please stop when they do." Daenerys said nothing. Her silence was the answer, her gaze locked upon the Red Keep. That night, Tyrion made a final betrayal of love. He freed Jaime from his chains. Their embrace was heavy with years of shared pain. Tyrion's voice cracked as he pleaded, "You saved me once when we were children. This will be the second time. Take her and go, escape, live." Jaime nodded, knowing this was their farewell. Dawn broke with the sound of marching boots and creaking siege engines. Euron Greyjoy's fleet waited in the bay. Scorpions mounted upon the city walls. Then, with a scream that split the sky, Drogon descended. Fire rained down upon ships, towers, and soldiers alike. The fleet burned, the scorpions shattered, the defenses crumbled. No one could withstand a dragon unleashed. The Lannister soldiers, overwhelmed with terror, dropped their swords. In the streets, the bells began to toll. "We surrender!" Voices cried out. A hush fell over the battlefield. For one fragile moment it seemed the slaughter was over, but Daenerys did not see surrender. She saw betrayal, loss, and the Red Keep looming like a scar. The bells tolled, and in her mind they became the echo of Missandei's last word, Dracarys. Her face twisted with rage. She spurred Drogon forward, and the dragon's fire poured onto the streets of King's Landing. Women carrying children, men fleeing in panic, the elderly too slow to run, all consumed in fire. Stone towers cracked and collapsed. Streets turned into rivers of ash. Arya Stark ran among the terrified, the chaos reflected in her eyes. Through her, the massacre became unbearably real. Collapsing buildings, burning mothers, children crushed beneath stone. Jon Snow watched in horror as his own men, Dothraki, unsullied, joined the slaughter, cutting down unarmed civilians. He screamed, "Fall back! Fall back!" But his voice was lost in the roar of fire and chaos, humanity drowned in blood and flame. In the shadows of the city, Jaime fought his way to the Red Keep only to face Euron Greyjoy. Their duel was vicious, brutal. Steel clashed, blood spilled. Jaime was pierced again and again, but with a final thrust he killed Euron, collapsing with wounds of his own. Broken and bleeding, he stumbled through the collapsing corridors until he found Cersei. The twins embraced as the castle crumbled around them. Tears streamed down Cersei's face. "Our child," she whispered. Jaime's reply was a rasp of devotion. "Only us. Nothing else matters." Stones rained down, burying them together, locked in each other's arms as the Red Keep collapsed. Elsewhere, Sandor Clegane pulled Arya aside. His words cut deeper than any blade. "If you come with me, you'll die here. Don't let your life end in hate. Go live." Arya's eyes filled with tears, but she turned away. The Hound strode into the Inferno to meet his brother. The Clegane brothers clashed in a battle that shook the very stones. The Mountain was a monster of flesh and rage, refusing to die no matter how many wounds he suffered. The Hound, driven by fury and fate, dragged his brother into the flames. Fire consumed them both, ending a lifelong torment. Arya stumbled through the ruins, bloodied and broken. She barely survived collapsing walls, crushing crowds and storms of fire. Every step was agony, every breath ash. And then, in the silence after the storm, she saw it, a white horse ghostly amid the smoke. She climbed onto its back, and together they rode through the shattered streets. Arya's eyes reflected the ruin of a city turned to ash, her face both mourning and defiance. Above the carnage, Daenerys soared on Drogon's back, gazing over the smoldering remains of King's Landing. She was no longer the liberator who once promised to break chains. She was fire incarnate, the new face of fear. The bells had rung, but peace had not come. Only ashes. King's Landing was no longer a city. It was a graveyard of ashes and screams. The sky hung heavy with smoke, turning daylight into twilight. The streets were littered with broken stones, charred bodies, and the remnants of lives once lived. A child's toy lay shattered in front of a burned house. A mother's hand still clutched the fingers of her child beneath a pile of rubble. The wind carried not hope, but the haunting echo of death. Once the capital of Westeros, with its golden domes and proud towers, King's Landing had become nothing more than a smoldering ruin. Drogon's fire had reduced it to shadows and dust. Through this devastation walked Tyrion Lannister. Each step felt like a lifetime. His eyes watered from smoke and grief alike. He passed corpses, collapsed walls, and streets soaked with ash. And then he reached the Red Keep's ruins. His heart pounded as he descended into the debris, searching. When he found them, he froze. Jaime and Cersei, twins bound by love and by sin, lay crushed beneath the stones, still locked in each other's embrace. Tyrion's knees gave way. He tried desperately to pull rocks aside with trembling hands, but it was useless. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he whispered, broken, "My family. My damned, cursed family." Whatever they had been, cruel, arrogant, monstrous, they were his blood. And now they were gone. Above, in the scorched square, Daenerys Targaryen appeared like a figure from prophecy. She walked through the ruins with Drogon behind her. His vast wings spread, casting shadows that blotted out the sun. To her soldiers, she was a savior, radiant in victory. She raised her voice, sharp as steel and fiery as dragon flame. "The world is not yet free. We will break the wheel. We will liberate every city, every people, everywhere." Her words should have sounded like hope. Instead, they rang with conquest, with endless war. Her army roared in triumph, unsullied spears clattering, Dothraki voices thundering. But Jon Snow, standing among them, felt only dread. And Tyrion, watching from the crowd, knew the truth. Daenerys was not a liberator, but a conqueror. With heavy resolve, Tyrion stepped forward. He tore the hand of the queen brooch from his chest and hurled it to the ground. His voice trembled with rage and grief. "You slaughtered a city. You killed millions. Daenerys's eyes turned cold as winter. With a flick of her hand, guards seized him. He was dragged to the cells, once a man of council, now a prisoner of the queen he had served. Later, Arya slipped close to Jon. Her face was marked by ash and blood, her eyes harder than steel. "She will never stop," Arya whispered. "The next war will be us." Jon's heart twisted. He had bent the knee to Daenerys. He had given her his loyalty and, more than that, his love. Yet now he saw the truth. She was fire without end. In the dungeon, Tyrion's voice sealed Jon's torment. "She loves you, but she will never love the world. If you don't choose now, no one will." Jon's soul was torn in two, love against duty, heart against honor. When he finally climbed the ruined steps of the Red Keep, he found her there, Daenerys in awe before the Iron Throne. The throne was half buried in rubble, its jagged blades glinting through layers of ash. She reached out, her fingers caressing the cold steel. This was her dream since childhood, to stand here to claim the throne her family had forged. Jon approached, tears in his eyes. His voice cracked as he begged, "You can still make the world better, please." Daenerys turned, her gaze burning with conviction. "We know what is good, and we will decide for them." Their lips met in one final kiss, a fleeting echo of the love they might have had. But as they parted, Jon drove the dagger into her heart. Her breath caught, her eyes widened with shock, then slowly closed. The mother of dragons, breaker of chains, died in Jon's arms. The silence that followed was broken by the roar of Drogon. The great beast descended, his cry shaking stone and sky alike. He saw his mother's lifeless body. He saw Jon standing over her. For a heartbeat, it seemed he would burn Jon where he stood. But Drogon's gaze shifted to the Iron Throne. With a scream of fury, he unleashed his fire. The flames poured over the ancient throne, melting steel, shattering centuries of ambition. The Iron Throne, symbol of power and destruction, was reduced to molten slag. Drogon then lifted Daenerys' body gently in his claws and flew into the horizon. She was gone, and the throne she lived for was gone with her. Days later, the lords and ladies of Westeros gathered to decide the future. Grey Worm stood grim as stone, the Unsullied at his back. Tyrion, still a prisoner, was brought forward. Yet it was his voice that cut through the uncertainty. From this day, kings and queens will not be chosen by blood. They will be chosen by story. And no one has a better story than Bran the Broken. All eyes turned to the boy in the wheelchair, who was now more vision than flesh. Bran accepted with calm finality. He would be king, not because he desired it, but because he was the living memory of their world. Sansa stood. Her voice was proud, her face resolute. "The North will remain free. The North is independent. I am its queen." And none dared to deny her. Arya, restless and untamed, chose another path. She boarded her ship and sailed west, beyond the maps, beyond the known world. Her journey was toward the horizon, toward the unknown. Jon Snow, the man who had killed his queen, received his sentence. Not death, not glory, exile. He would return to the Night's Watch, to the Wall, to the land of cold and shadows. Yet when he finally walked beyond the Wall, Ghost at his side and the free folk around him, it felt not like punishment, but like freedom. The true North, wild and untamed, welcomed him home. Tyrion became Hand of the King once more, sworn to serve Bran, to mend what had been broken, to rebuild what had been lost. His punishment was to fix the world he had helped shatter. The final moments showed three Stark children, each on their path. Sansa, crowned in the north, wearing her people's faith like armor. Arya sailing into the great unknown, her eyes on the edge of the world. Jon leading the free folk through the forests beyond the Wall, vanishing into the snow. The camera pulled back, showing Westeros forever changed. The Iron Throne was gone. The wars had ended. But the stories would live on.